is Molly. I am listening to the Because It's There podcast with Sarah. I had such an awesome session with her today. She really made me think and dig deeply for some answers, which challenged and pushed me, and I loved it. And I also had so much fun in such an interactive session. Thank you.
Because It's There with Saray Khumalo is proudly sponsored by Vuma.
In a world of possibilities, our choices define who we are. We can choose to simply get things done, but we choose to make a difference. We can choose to go far, or we can choose to go further. We choose great over good every time because we can. And because we can, we must. We don't just act, we activate. When we move forward. Instead of simply providing access, we see the potential for success. Because where others see data, we see dreams. To us, connecting means more than plugs and ports. We exist to empower ordinary people to do extraordinary things. We aim higher and we choose to do more. We don't wait for opportunities. We create them. Our choices define us, and when faced with the choice, we always choose extraordinary.
Molly, thank you so much for joining me on Because It's There, a podcast about leadership. And how appropriate is it for us to have the sixth South African woman to summit Mount Everest on her way to get the 7 summits around the world. Mount Everest was your 6th summit, and Congratulations on that, and welcome. So I'll start with a little bit of an icebreaker. I was born at sea level, but my head has always been in the skies because?
Well, I always wanted to be high up. I don't know if it helps because I'm so tall as well. I've maybe had a different view to everybody else. But as a child, you'd always find me climbing the biggest tree in the garden. And if we went somewhere and there was a hill nearby, I would always be the one hiking up it to see what I could see from the top.
And that's actually very good. And how did that work out for you on top of the world?
Well, it's actually resulted me in seeing many, many, many different beautiful views in many different places. And it's an experience I never imagined that I would enjoy throughout my life. And it's been such a wonderful privilege to do so.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Let's talk a little bit more about you. Is there any distinction between, in your identities when people say, hey, Molly, which I do quite a lot, and when they say Marlette? How does that differ?
I can tell you now that the distinction when you call me Molly and how I feel, and when you call me Marlette and how I feel, there's definitely a difference. But it's quite funny. I've almost never been called by my full name, Marlette. I remember in high school once making a list of all my nicknames that I'd been given throughout my high school time, and it was over 30 nicknames. So I had a good laugh about that because, Marlette's just something only people in authority use for me. And so I started being called Molly as an adult. And the name, it just stuck. So now I actually don't even bother introducing myself as Marlette because I know someone's going to end up calling me something else anyway. And in my adult life is really when I also became more adventurous and ultimately a mountaineer. And so I think my identity of Molly is that fun, adventurous person, and then Marlette is the serious stuff. Just an anecdote, my brother once sent me a WhatsApp, and in that text, he called me Marlette, and I just got on the phone and I was like, is something wrong? Are you cross? It instantly gives it that serious tone. So yeah, the distinction.
So Molly, it's how you doing? Marlette is like, you are in trouble.
Yeah, something like that.
Oh, wow. So let me go back to one of the interesting stories that I think you told me, or I read about you, on your way to Kilimanjaro in 2000. I believe you were in your jeans. You had this epiphany of climbing more and more mountains. A little bit like Mandela said, after climbing one hill, you suddenly notice there's a lot more out there. Describe what propelled you to that decision.
Well, Kili was really because it's their moment. I'd been invited by my older brother and two of his friends to join them on a road trip up Africa. So the plan was we were going to drive through Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Malawi, and end up where we ended up. And it's along the way that people were like, well, if you're going to be in Tanzania, why don't you climb Kilimanjaro? And we kind of, casually thought about it, but it didn't become real until we'd kind of done everything we wanted to do in Tanzania and realized, wow, there's this opportunity to go and climb Kilimanjaro because we were there and it was there. So we hadn't trained for it. We hadn't prepared for it, hence the jeans. And I'm by no means recommending you climb Kilimanjaro or any mountain in a pair of jeans. Or without preparation, but we were young, so it was different. I just had such a rich and satisfying experience for myself as a human, having experienced something I'd never planned for or had a goal for before, and enjoying the challenge and the achievement so much that it opened my mind to begin searching for other similar experiences, which, of course, for me, you could only replicate once you're on another summit.
Oh, wow. That is interesting. And after Kilimanjaro, you realize, you can do more, there's more mountains and so forth. But that was Kili. That was you going with your brother. When did you realize that adventure? I mean, I know you've done a lot of mountain biking and other crazy stuff. You actually do motorbike racing and all sorts. When did you realize that adventure was going to be a big part of your life? Is it when you were younger? Is there a specific moment that just said, aha, this is my thing?
Well, I have to laugh because I recently received all my school reports from my mother. She was cleaning out the cupboard in the house, and I took a picture of this one school report when it was the old days where they had the blocks for each subject. And under physical education, my teacher had written, Marlette, see the serious tone, Marlette does not show an interest in physical activities. If I can find this teacher and go back and, show her sort of my adult adventure resume, I wonder what she would think. So clearly it wasn't as, somebody in primary school that I had this epiphany. It really became, the turning point for me was Kilimanjaro. It was Kilimanjaro because it was something that was so profound for me that it changed my mindset and my outlook. And I started searching for more adventurous activities. And yes, so along the path, I started and developed a huge love for mountain biking. I also love motorbikes. Sometimes I was riding off-road, then I was riding track, scuba diving, trekking, you name it. If it was adventurous and different, it was something that I would explore and see whether I enjoyed it or not. So the things that stuck with me were definitely mountaineering and all the in the motor operated device. So I wouldn't say it was one moment. It was more of a growth in my adult life, mostly in my 20s. And as I opened myself to and tried out different experiences, I found what I was truly passionate about. So it took like 10 years between Kili and my next of the 7 summits, because in that time I did things like the Inca Trail, trekking in Patagonia, I was scuba diving for a long time, I was cycling quite a lot. And so that took up quite a bit of time between Kilimanjaro and Mount Elbrus.
Yeah. That's interesting that you said it's not a moment. It sounds like it's over a period of time, and it evolved from one sport to the next. Interesting. And where were you in your life, emotionally, spiritually? Is there anything that you can think of when we were going through this period? Had something specific apart from Kilimanjaro happened in your life that just said, I want to do this?
That's not something I can really recall either. I think I wasn't, as emotionally and spiritually developed as I am now. And so I was young and just keen to explore and try out different things. And the emotional, spiritual growth wasn't something I was in tune with at that time as I am now. So I'm in a very different space right now. But I think it was all part of my development and growth to get me to this point.
All right. So, most of my guests, I have to explain to them who a Sherpa is and the role they play. I don't have to do that with you, with 2 Everest expeditions under your belt. So tell me, who is the most important Sherpa in your life? Is it one? Is it many? And let's talk about that.
Yeah, it's many. I've had many journeys of adventure, and I have many different people that I would call, that take on the Sherpa role. Yeah. And I would say so because just like different mountains, they come with different supporters. So for example, Kili, we have porters. Yeah. Ak and Denali, they're pretty much totally self-supported. And then there's, of course, Everest, where you have your Sherpa per person with you most of the time. And so my journey of life has been like those mountains, different people playing different roles for different aspects of the journey. And then also a lot of the time, like on Denali, you actually just have to carry your own load and support yourself, be your own biggest supporter. However, people I've literally climbed mountains with or done really hard challenges with, like on mountain bikes, they are friends for life. I think you know what it's like if you've done something really, really difficult with a special person or a group of people, there's a bond and they become your, figurative Sherpa in life. And so those are strong, successful people that I can go to for advice at any time. And so, a lot of people come to mind. A lot of people that have been very, very special to me. And then a lot of the time I've been there for myself as well.
Important.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like those mountains, Denali. And even on Everest, there were actually sometimes on our second rotation. Noel and I climbed without our Sherpa support. And so you have to be able to pick up your load and carry it when you need to.
Yeah, humbling. And if we were to pick just one Sherpa of the ones that you've thought about, can you tell us a little bit more about that one that comes to mind, and how you came into contact with them? Okay,
so the person that comes to mind the most for me is a good friend, Rebecca. She's been there on literal mountains with me, having come to Everest Base Camp, and we're big mountain biking Sherpa mates, I could say. But also she's somebody that's really been there for me in my personal life, having gone through very similar experiences. And I think that's what binds you as well, is when you have that common ground, when you've been through similar things in your life, then you can really be there for one another in important ways when it really counts. And how I met her, funny enough, I used to have a beauty salon and do lots of facials. And so she was recommended or referred to me by another client. And she'll tell the story that there she was innocently lying, having her facial with me. And next thing she knew, she was coming to Everest Base Camp, on a big trek. And we've just been great friends ever since and gone all over on amazing adventures. Yeah, so I would say she's probably the person that comes to mind first.
Wow. And what role would you say has she played in your life? I mean, I've seen you with her. You came to attempt the Guinness World Record with me, with her on there. I know you were cycling with her before Everest. Mm-hmm. What role has she played for you that you're comfortable to share, whether it's in your career, your life journey, anything? And how has it worked out for you?
Well, sure. I can imagine her in her trekking gear, in her cycling gear, dressed up for an event, so many different roles. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes, like a Sherpa can be there just, for support. So maybe they're carrying something literally for you and they're supporting you. And so Rebecca would carry some emotional support for me, for a lot of times. And also then I would reciprocate. So sometimes even in the mountains, the Sherpas can have a bad day and we need to support them. Or then there'd be a guide, the Sherpa's actually showing you how to do something or teaching you or training you. And so she would take on that role as well. She's a very successful person in the business sphere. And if I need to bounce off any big critical decisions with her, she would give me really good advice and also be brutally honest. Those kind of friendships where maybe it's the things you don't want to hear. Yeah. But you should hear them. She's the person who's going to say them to me. And I really value that.
Yeah, that is amazing. Don't you just love those people that just tell you straight?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's go to Everest. I first met you here before our Everest expedition in 2015 when the earthquake happened, which was your first attempt. Describe your journey then. Where were you when the earthquake happened, and how did that whole experience prepare you, if it did, for 2021?
Yeah, sure. That was a big experience here, Sarah. I left South Africa in March 2015 with the intention of summiting Everest. But I know I'm listed as an Everest attempter, but I really don't feel like I did because I never left base camp, even though we'd been there in the Himalayas for 6 weeks. We reached base camp in early April. We left base camp to go to Island Peak, which a lot of people use as an acclimatization time. And a few days after summiting Island Peak, we came back to base camp. It was about the 20th of April. And then, as you know, on the 25th of April, there was that massive earthquake that triggered that huge avalanche that as a result struck base camp. It was a traumatizing experience for me. We were actually in the avalanche. It shook over our tents. It was just fortunate where we were at base camp that it wasn't carrying the rocks and ice that it had with that force, the people that it struck at the base of the icefall. And so although it kind of swept over our tents and it was a frightening experience, when we emerged from the tents, we were shocked to find that, other people had actually died from the same thing that we had just been through. And so I was interviewed not long after the event, and they asked me the question, would you go back? And I actually said no. I said no. It was obviously very soon after the event. And I think I said that because we know that we can die doing these things. We know that. But when you actually see death, it has a different gravity, Okay, I did finish that interview saying, yes, I will finish the 7 summits. So obviously it was inevitable that I would return. How did it prepare me for my 2021 attempt? Well, it definitely had once again a humbling experience. You know, that effect that you cannot climb a mountain, any mountain, overconfident or arrogant is what I should say. Not arrogant, you should be humble. A summit is never guaranteed. So no matter how prepared or how strong you are, things can work out very differently to how you plan for them. And so your approach and your attitude should be one that is humble, not arrogant. And that is the main sort of preparation. And I think that's a really important part of climbing.
It is. It is indeed. You're spot on. I think the mountain humbles you. Doesn't matter how arrogant or how big you think you are. It does humble you every time. It helps you realize how much of a speck we are in the bigger scheme of things. Yeah. So 2021, you decide just, I don't know if I should say in the middle of the pandemic, you decide, I'm doing this, How did this come about? I know you were battling with the decision to go or not to go. And what did you do differently in 2021, if any?
Well, again, it was a gradual thing, because there I was in 2015 in May saying no, and then a couple of years later I went back. So a couple of people and a couple of events inspired me. My friend Wilmin summiting Everest in 2017, I climbed Aconcagua and Denali with her. So that was really close and really real to me. And of course, your own attempts and then your success, as well as finding my own inner strength and confidence after my personal life had knocked me about between 2015 and 2019. And something else that contributed to having the confidence and going about things differently was climbing the Carstens Pyramid in 2019. So that just helped me to find my inner strength again, to revisit my goal of the 7 summits, which Everest was an important part of that goal. And in line with what I believe about goal setting, I wrote that goal down on my wheel of life. Yeah. I drew the whole route up. I planned it. I visualized it. I put it on my wall so I could see it every day. I had initially intended to climb Everest last year, though, 2020. So I was packed. I was prepared. And of course, we all know what happened. So when everyone phoned me in March last year and said, "Oh, you must be so disappointed," I actually was excited, because I was like, you know what? I've got 1 more year to train, to get fit. So how did it prepare me for this year? Well, I've spent a lot more time on the mountain bike. I pushed myself further, faster. I hiked a lot more. And when I went hiking, I'd carry a 20 kg backpack, and then lots of upper body strength training. So I saw it as an opportunity, and made sure I made best use of that time, so I was as prepared as possible for the expedition this year.
Fantastic. And what were the most difficult? I mean, Everest in itself, 6 to 8 weeks, there's fun days, bad days, and very bad days. What was the most difficult moments in this expedition for you, and how did you manage those?
Difficult moments were, and this is something that I think a lot of people don't consider, is the long time waiting at base camp. There's a lot of time, either for us this year, it was before starting our rotations. For others, as the season developed, it was a long time waiting for a summit window. And so that's why a lot of people, and you'll know this obviously yourself, have warned that Everest actually can give you a lot of mental fatigue. I mean, that's something that you need to manage. And that can come from those long moments where you don't know when you're going on your next rotation or your summit push, or what's going to happen even the next day necessarily. So that long time waiting at base camp was a difficult thing to manage. So how did I manage it? I just focus on the present and use my time to rest, to journal, or even to listen to music. I remember lying in my tent for 3-4 hours at a time, having done absolutely nothing except listen to music, and thought, where do we give ourselves this kind of time at home? Well, not me, I don't. I'd feel guilty if I did that at home. So most of the time on Everest really involves managing yourself at any given time, whether it's resting in your tent or fighting for your life up in the death zone, and focusing on your thoughts and your actions. But so that was a difficult sort of moment in a general sense. However, the most difficult day for me was the day after summit. I was still coming down from Camp 4 after about 45 hours in the death zone. My Sherpa had left me. The other Sherpa had problems with his vision. Naturally, I was exhausted. We just heard that 2 people, one of whom had become a friend for the series of the time of the expedition in Nepal, he had died, which was really tragic and sobering. And the weather was absolutely awful. We maybe had 1 meter of visibility, and we still had to get down it took us 9 hours on very difficult terrain, the yellow band, down the Lhotse face. And how did I manage that? Well, I tapped into my fear side. I remember thinking very clearly 2 things. Well, one thing I said to myself is, Molly, you are not going to die today. And I said that to myself a number of times. And then the other thing, I was like, because our weather was really bad, I was like, you wanted to climb Everest, and look what you've been given, proper Everest documentary movie weather. It's like I'm in an actual movie. This is where you wanted to be, so you got to deal with the weather. And so the way I dealt with it is like, cool, I'm in a movie, and this is amazing, and I'm not going to die. Yeah. That's what worked for me.
That's interesting. It's actually when you look back and you think, that was crazy. Why was I thinking that way? But it keeps you sane.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So let me just go back. You've probably touched on some of this. What was your mindset pushing up from Camp 4 into the death zone towards the summit? Was there any thinking or anything going through your mind that you can be comfortable to share at this point?
Yeah, of course. So, you know about me, I'm extremely goal orientated. So on the summit push, we left at 7 p.m. So naturally it's dark. It was quite difficult for me because I kept looking for the summit. I kept wanting to say, okay, there's the end point. Yeah. That is what I can see, and that's what I'm working towards. But since it was nighttime, it wasn't easy to see. So I would think, okay, where this cluster of people's headlamps is must be the summit, or where there's lights flashing, that must be the summit. And I was wrong every single time. So I actually found that quite difficult mentally. So I had to abandon that strategy. I had to say, okay, since I'm not going to be able to see the summit and put a marker on it, that's not going to serve me. So just be content with putting one foot in front of another, like you say, keep stepping until the summit. And in the meantime, make sure that what I did with every next step kept me safe and kept me sane. So it just became extremely simple, doing the very next thing right. So how I moved, how I used my safety equipment, what I focused on, what I looked at, how my mindset was. So literally just exactly what you can control at that point in time is what my mindset was.
Yeah, keeping it simple works all the time.
Absolutely, simple and focused.
Absolutely. And there you go, you're on the summit. What's going through Molly's mind at that point?
Honestly, not much. I think what I knew and the feedback I've been given in the stories I've told is was really powerful for other people. But I knew this, and you would know this, and most mountaineers would know this. The summit is halfway. Yeah. And so you're extremely conscious that this is not the end. as people that have finished races. When you cross a finish line, you get a medal, you get a drink, somebody's there to transport you to wherever you need to go. It's over. Whereas on the summit, you just want to quickly take some pictures and videos, and mine were really not National Geographic quality, I can say. You try to have a quick look around. You say, okay, but you're very conscious that you have to turn around and safely get back down. For me, the true summit was really being back at base camp.
Always. And after the summit, what was your mindset like? So you're on the summit, you're there, it's done, pictures are done, and Molly's going back towards Camp 4. What's going through your mind? And how was the weather, by the way, at that point?
So there's a few things that come to mind with this. There's a very sobering reminder just before the summit. There's a body lying there. Now, we all know that there are bodies on Everest, and we all are prepared that we probably will see them somewhere along the way, which unfortunately it's a sad reality. But about 20 minutes before the summit, there was a perfectly dressed body lying there, perfectly preserved. It looked like this person has literally just 5 minutes ago sat down or lain down and is looking at the view. And so when I saw this, I turned around and I looked at Noel, and he looked at me and he said, yeah, this is one of the realities of climbing. So you have to check yourself and think, this person had the same goals, dreams, ambitions as me. They're somebody's loved one. And they had probably prepared themselves as much as, or if maybe even better than me, to achieve this goal. And yet they are no longer alive. And so for me, that was a mental check. And just to say, how am I feeling? Do I have enough in reserve to make it to the summit and back again? And so that was also on my mind, a sobering reminder of staying safe, doing the next thing right, and making it back down safely. And so it's almost a self-preservation mode as well that you have to tap into. So after the summit, we had a difficult and challenging descent. The weather did actually change, and the visibility got quite a lot worse. Some team members had issues physically with vision and with the cold. And so it was really a time of tapping into deep self-preservation, deep resilience, and not giving up.
Yeah. Wow. As you were speaking, I was like going through there with you. Was this happening at the Hillary step, and where is she at this point? So thank you for sharing that. Brings back some bittersweet memories, especially when you recount of the body of somebody that was probably optimistic about life and didn't realize that was going to be their end. But thank you for sharing. So
you're welcome.
You met fellow adventurers on this journey. You touched on it a little bit earlier, and they didn't make it off the mountain. And you realized that before getting to base camp. What did that do to your mindset? And how did you keep saying and keep going? How did you deal with the news effectively?
Yeah, this was probably ultimately the toughest thing to deal with on the mountain. It was extremely sad. It was also very scary to contemplate that 2 people died doing the same thing on the same day in the same weather as me. And it was hard to comprehend. And even now it's something that's difficult to comprehend. And also at that point in time, extremely sobering. When I first heard the news, I was at Camp 4, and the one person, Abdul, he had died coming down from the summit. He hadn't made it back to Camp 4, and the other person died close to or at Camp 4. And so it was somewhere I still was there at Camp 4 on the South Col. And when I heard the news, I actually burst out crying. It was really, really tragic. And especially because Abdul was someone we'd met in Kathmandu, and he'd spent every day with us for 4 weeks. And he'd become a friend, because he was someone we'd seen every day. We shared a dining tent with him. He joined us on most activities that we'd done. And so he wasn't somebody we didn't know. It was somebody we'd come to know well. And so that struck a much deeper chord for me, and therefore made it much, much sadder and more sobering. We'd seen him that morning. We'd seen him on the way up to Summit, and he'd seemed fine. He was just tired like everybody else is, in the death zone at those heights. But he never made it back to Camp 4. And so what's my mindset? It was, again, made me think about my own vulnerability, my own mortality. But ultimately, it fueled my desire to stay alive. And therefore, that sort of mantra that I gave to myself coming down from Camp 4, Molly, you are not going to die today. And that made sure that I got back to base camp safely in that day that I described. It was so difficult. It made me determined not to die.
Yeah. I'm sorry about the experience and the loss. Having experienced all that, has it created any specific philosophy for you that you may use in your coaching? I know you are a coach. Or how have you, or are you embodying some of those experiences in the work that you do every day or in your personal life?
I love the steps approach. The word steps, stepping it sounds so simple, but it's also so appropriate for the mountains. And so I use the steps approach, which is the 5 steps to achieving your goals, whether it's, finishing a marathon or climbing a mountain or getting a promotion. And that is to set your goals, to train for them, to enjoy the journey, surround yourself with the right people, that's the P, and then ultimately share your story. And that's been my successful approach to performance coaching. But I've been giving a lot of thought to Everest, and there's a lot of depth that this experience has given me that I can add to the steps approach. And I'm working on adding all of that. A lot of people want to know about resilience, about mindset, and I've been giving that some thought. I want to build a new philosophy so that I can impart some new thoughts to people in a powerful way. But I need to take some time. Everest is a big experience. There's a lot of learnings. So I constantly have my notebook or even my voice recorder nearby. And so when I have some thoughts that I want to process, that is what I'm doing. And so, watch the space. I'll say that for now.
I believe that, because even a year on, you still reflect. You realize, that, oh my God, that can relate to this. And so you have a long journey ahead. I can't wait to see as it unveils itself.
Thank
Molly,
you.
we're almost close to the end. Could you describe your best failure and how it propelled you forward?
I could describe it. It's not an easy thing to describe, but ultimately it's, I still would put it under the context of my best failure. As you know, between 2015 and 2019, I was in an abusive relationship. And while in the relationship, I felt like an absolute failure because this was a challenge I simply could not overcome. I couldn't apply my strength to it. I couldn't apply anything that had helped me be successful in the mountains to this scenario. And the abuse drained me so much emotionally and mentally that I was physically exhausted. And so when a final act of violence woke me up to the danger I was in, and I finally took action and had him arrested, got a restraining order, and ultimately divorced, I did the hard work that I needed to recover from that. And so it was the worst time of my life, but I can now call it my best failure because I learned so much from it. I learned about vulnerability, about admitting to what I felt like was embarrassing failure, and asking for and accepting help, which is something that up to that point was something very difficult for me to do. And I now understand the world of women and men who are in abusive relationships, that it happens to us strong women. Yeah. And I understand not only my physical and emotional, but also my mental strength. Before this relationship, I wasn't as in touch with myself as an entire soul, all the layers that it takes. And it makes me think of the ancient writer Paul, who said, when I am weak, I am powerful. And resilience is really built on knowing yourself, not only when you're powerful, but also at your weakest. And so how did it propel me forward? Well, a month after he was removed from my life, and I was still reeling in shock, trauma, and grief, I went to climb the Carson's Pyramid, my 5th of the 7 summits. And that was a moment when I felt like I, became Molly again. I took my power back. And it was a pivotal moment in propelling me towards recovery.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Really privileged to have walked with you and still walking with you through that journey. I like taking the power back. And also, in the olden days, if you think about it, women took the shame, and yet the person that should be ashamed is the abuser. So congratulations on picking that up and also being able to be vulnerable with us and sharing your story, because many more that are still going through it can benefit from it. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So I also know you to be a talented speaker. As the last question, you have foregrounded your content around resilience, goal setting, which you've mentioned, and adventure. What do you think the corporate world needs to hear from a person such as yourself in the current climate with COVID, lockdown, the new normal, and so forth?
I've really given this a lot of thought, and I'm hoping to find the words that I want to use in my public speaking and my public message soon. As I said, Everest is such a big experience to process and even try to sum up. And, it's been a couple of weeks for me. You said it's been years, and you're still coming with ideas or processes or moments, right? So it's still very fresh for me. But yes, the current climate of the world is very similar to Everest in a lot of ways. The winds of uncertainty are blowing. Some people are succeeding while others are failing. There's a lot of negativity. There's fear-mongering. You can't plan far ahead in your life right now because you don't know where you're going to be, when the next lockdown is coming or not. And so you're forced in this current world, just like I was on Everest, to be present. There's so much going on externally in the world, in the current climate today. It's scary stuff. It's dangerous, possibly. And basically, it's impossible to control.
Yeah.
But if you bring your focus into your present and into yourself, that's where your power lies. Yeah. In controlling your thoughts and your actions in the present moment. And only you can manage your next thought and your next action and do the next thing right. And when you do that, it focuses you on what you can control. And then you take back your power, you gain confidence, and you can keep on moving in the direction of your goal, no matter what is going on around you. And so in terms of goal setting, be very clear about your goal. Write it down, draw it, make it visual. To me, that's an important step. And then once that goal is clear, if you know where you're going, no matter what is going on in the world around you, being resilient involves persevering, having a no-quit attitude, and show up to your commitments, whether it's meeting a deadline, something small, or whether it's climbing a mountain.
Yeah, that is beautiful. That is well put. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. If you have any last words, anything of wisdom that you would like to just share with some of the listeners, from Molly with love to whoever it is that's listening, please do go ahead and share.
Just really something that's heartfelt for me is that maybe I'm not viewed or I'm seen as somebody extraordinary or extra special. I can assure you I'm not, and I'm sure you feel the same, Sarah. I know that cognitively, I know, yes, I've done amazing things, but deep down, I'm the same as every other human being. Have the same fears, the same challenges. In so many ways, life has been the same as many other people. And so whatever your mountain is, whether it is, getting around the block or climbing Everest, you are 100% capable of whatever it is that you set that goal, you set your mind to it, and don't give up. Achieve it one step at a time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Molly. And I look forward to seeing you on your 7th summit, and maybe
let me do it together.
Why not? Why not?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah,
thanks. Bye.
Because It's There with Saray Khumalo is proudly sponsored by Vuma.
In a world of possibilities, our choices define who we are. We can choose to simply get things done, but we choose to make a difference. We can choose to go far, or we can choose to go further. We choose great over good every time because we can. And because we can, we must. We don't just act, we activate. When we move forward. Instead of simply providing access, we see the potential for success. Because where others see data, we see dreams. To us, connecting means more than plugs and ports. We exist to empower ordinary people to do extraordinary things. We aim higher and we choose to do more. We don't wait for opportunities. We create them. Our choices define us, and when faced with the choice, we always choose extraordinary.